I think the session before has already set the tone and raised the key concerns as well as the opportunities. I would like to raise one thing. When we are navigating the unknown, the biggest power the unknown brings that it make everybody equal. Nobody knows what the right solution is. And that basically create a unity and collective action to solve that problem which is unknown today. And the climate is one of a key area which is unknown. We don't know how it will evolve. We can only assess the risk, but we cannot exactly know what is going to happen and when with the certainty. And the disasters which we have seen in the past, they were of such a huge magnitude that the losses which we have suffered in a different part of the world, we don't want that to happen again. And that will again require a collective action. And just picking up a couple of things, Madam Aisha, Secretary, raised that they want to make Pakistan as a part of the delivery center for the climate one. So while we are working as a Spectreco, Spectreco has a delivery center in Pakistan for climate and working for US, Europe and Middle Eastern clients. Similarly, the capacity building, the talent which we are using here is developed in Pakistan by using the content which is created in Pakistan, and now they are advising the governments, investors and the businesses around the world. And picking up on Pakistan specifically, like under the current situation, and I'll start with you, Dr. Samuel. Being a part of the International Development Agency and Musaddiq Malik, Minister, Ministry of Climate Change, he raised one concern that how the development agencies are contributing. He thanked them as well, and he also raised one of a concern about whether it's going to be another industrialization policy going forward, how UNDP is going to work in Pakistan or working in Pakistan and addressing those climate vulnerability, keeping in mind that what is our background and what are our opportunity and constraints. So what are the key initiatives UNDP bringing which can help address the climate vulnerability of Pakistan?
Thanks very much, Sajjeed. Thank you to the forum's organizers for joining. This is my first time here, very pleased to join. So maybe I'll share a couple of things and then speak a little bit about UNDP because I think it builds on the previous work. The idea that something catastrophic may or may not happen, I think the likelihood of something happening is more likely than not. So often in relation to climate change, we talk about when, not if. And Pakistan particularly is prone to many different things. I think we heard that earlier: flood, drought, tsunami watch, earthquake watch, many other things happening. So I think more and more the discussion should be about prevention and preparedness than it is about recovery. And I think that's where the discussion that we are having today is really quite important in light of the global changes that are happening, whether they relate to finance or global policy and other. I think for Pakistan it is astounding and perhaps a lesson learned that in one single event you can lose about 2,000 lives, you can lose $30 billion worth of loss and damage, future, you can lose 2 million houses, 2+ million houses. But this is the same Pakistan which over the last 1.5 years has had a remarkable turnaround from the brink of default, financially speaking, in just about 1.5 years to where we are now, sustainable. And I think it is important to realize that there's a particular difference between where sometimes Pakistan appears financially and some of the broad and important and critical messages, and some of the realities on the ground when you talk to people either who are continuing to be vulnerable to climate change or poverty, etc. And I think there are some of these discrepancies that need to be bridged to a great extent. At UNDP, I think there are 3 things that are important to mention, many of which are happening with the Ministry of Climate Change. Secretary Aisha spoke about this a little bit. There's the part about data and analysis. The baseline, having numbers to be able to actually do good, solid work. Secondly, there's the policy and advocacy. And third, there is the programming part. On data and analysis and policy and advocacy, our work supports the government's work. Our work supports the national agenda for climate change, whether it's on nationally determined contributions, reducing emissions by 2030, how much money comes from abroad, how much money is invested here, how much the transition to clean energy happens, and I think that is an important distinction. The agenda that UNDP or the UN system has on climate change is not our own agenda, it's the national agenda that needs to be supported. I often say, we joke around in UNDP that if it's not a project, it does not exist. And that's where I think this link between policy and programming and data into actual initiatives and projects and programs is really quite important. Big discussion that's happening, hopefully together next week we'll be up in GB visiting a big project, glacial lake outburst floods. 6 or 7 years running, and it's a critical program for the lives and livelihoods of everyone living in the north. And this is just one programming that I think is important because it symbolizes almost everything that was mentioned earlier. Water in Pakistan as a source of life, and in many cases if you're part of a glacier flood, it's a source of death. And this is one of those things that I think is really quite important and unique to Pakistan. I've learned quite a bit by some visits to the north on things that I'd never heard of before, because I too do not come from the climate change part. But other than early warning systems, many of which are set up, other than preserving the glaciers, we work in 36 valleys, but there are 13,000 glaciers that we have already identified in some of our work. The prevention, preserving lives, early warning systems are really quite important, but also many different nature-based solutions that look like ice stupas, glacier grafting, slope stabilization. All of these are local indigenous solutions to some of the biggest problems that actually exist. So I would say if we're looking at the crisis that is looming, it is there, it's likely going to happen. What do we do about it? Prevention is much more important at this point than recovery. And thirdly, if we're looking at really, really good programming, this country has excellent programming that just needs to be scaled up. I think there is a global international financial imperative related to this, which is how do global partners support, whether it's in the UN system or other funds like GCF or GEF, etc. But also I think this is an important forum to be able to have these discussions with the business community, because a lot of the solutions and maybe the majority of the financing in the future will come from here. It is either government spending, or in many cases it will actually be private sector spending, because in many cases I would say the private sector here has already migrated from the idea that we're only doing charity to CSR. We're actually now much engaged in sustainable development goals.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Salman. I'll come back to you around the data and the impact assessment. That is there any challenge? Are we getting that data? Is there a right kind of information which we can share with in terms of the progress? It's auditable or not? And that's bringing me to you specifically when we are talking about private sector and the businesses. There are so many different standards, regulations, and the codes which are in play, even in Pakistan, starting from State Bank, very good initiative on a green banking, ESRM, then SECP has got IFRS. Recently, government also came up with very good code around the energy efficiency at a provincial level and at a national level. All those things create a certain challenge for the organization to really assess their risk and then make it comparable and the data which is reliable. So how you see as a ACCA, as an accountant, and you are also working a lot in the sustainability space, so how you see that integration of the public-private sector and bringing these standards and the reporting and the data and the assurance thing out in terms of the risk assessment and reporting?
Thank you, Sajjeed. First of all, I would like to congratulate all the organizers, Asfar and the team, Nutshell, for this another remarkable event. So I would say that how the private sector views climate now is actually, one, a business opportunity. Second is to absolutely hedge the risks, because there are no other way to look at this. Because if we want to sort of grow our businesses or sort of not be impacted by disrupted supply chains or weather events, or with regards to, say, not having the predictable costs, businesses and industries cannot move forward. Another very important consideration is that the world does not have immense resources in terms of which will actually go into the industries to cater to the 8 billion and the growing population, which means that we again need to look at the concept of circularity. We again need to look at that how resources can be optimized, how costs can be sort of brought down, which is like obviously every industry is impacted by the energy costs. And here we are sitting in a country where we have lots of challenges with regards to the energy costs that are very high. We have the hugest amount of potential coming from climate-friendly energy solutions, whether it is wind, solar, whether it is bioenergy, or it is likes of these. And when we need to look at the growth of business, gone are the days when we were only looking at that in a national context. Now businesses look at what is happening globally and what are the kind of regulations that are being enacted globally. Because of things like CBAM and many others, businesses here and obviously the supply chains can be tracked all the way back to the source. So this is of course, a small amount of risk, but a huge amount of opportunity. So I believe that industries and businesses, they now very clearly understand that what is the future, why this imperative is there for them. There is, when we look at any of the industry, whether it is the manufacturing sector, whether it is the supply chains, whether it is the services, and within the manufacturing, we have various industries. We have the white goods sector, we have many other types of manufacturing, of course, looking at the export-oriented manufacturing, textiles, of course, being one of them. When we look at the food industry, I know this conference is majorly supported by one of the food sector majors. All these companies, they are vulnerable to the risk of climate. So I think there's a lot of linkage. The business and industry linkage to the climate, energy and climate, energy and minerals, and now in Pakistan we are on a transformational sort of path for developing our mineral resources. Pakistan is one of the biggest reservoirs for copper. Copper is needed for energy transition. Copper is needed for climate resilience. So I actually see this personally, of course, as a huge opportunity. And my take on this is that the level of awareness that businesses have and using the right kind of tech, AI-driven analysis, I think there's a lot of predictability that can happen. So I think in a nutshell, it is actually an opportunity.
Thank you, Ayla. And I think all these reporting standards and the regulations which are evolving right now with the consultation, that help us to bring this risk out and also look at the opportunity side, like you rightly mentioned, that where the opportunities are also coming out. Sadi, coming to you, coming from the K Electric, and I'll pick up something which Justice Aisha was talking this morning very specifically, narrative building. She stressed a lot this morning that until we build the narrative right, it's very difficult to really get everybody along on that journey. And you are coming from a communication side, and you have got such a great story coming from K Electric, from a grassroots level, and you have worked at a level where at least a distribution company never thought about it, right? How we can bring that narrative out, and how we can really talk about something which Ayla picked up, that how we can conserve energy and getting into the energy efficiency side of it, as well as taking care of our community and making sure the people are doing things ethically, whatever they are doing, and how this narrative can be built not only as a communication tool, but as a tool which can generate the systemic change within that community where you are operating.
So, thank you, and I think this was probably Justice Aisha's first such public appearance. I think everybody in the hall is rooting for more. So want to thank us for a nutshell for making that happen. On the communication side of things, and don't get me wrong, I think climate change, the narrative has been around for quite some time, and we've got the Kyoto Protocol, we've got the Paris Agreement, it's 10 years done, we've got multiple more COPs. I think one happened in Dubai, one in Azerbaijan. I genuinely and honestly feel that this needs a rebrand. We've got the policymakers. I mean, they're not entirely, some sensitization, and there's policy driving, but the journey to the grassroots, it requires a massive rebrand. I mean, you can plan all you want on how you will save water and how you will conserve electricity, but if the bottom end user doesn't understand it, you've lost the plot. Climate change narrative, I mean, when it comes to user conversion, it has to be fun, it has to be localized, it has to be humanized, it has to be a brand that people own and adopt. And that's something where businesses can take a lead. We've done some programs at K Electric. So one of our biggest challenges is around urban infrastructure, and that comes with safety issues. There is excessive stress on the grid, and there's also loss of life due to safety. So we ran a door-to-door program, and then you have to root it in the local dynamics. Majority of my workforce is men. My operational timings are 9 to 5. When my staff goes door knocking, guess who opens the door? Well, they don't always open the door, they just say, go away. So we need to create that relevance. So we onboarded 50 women. They're now a 200 strong community. They've won global awards. They have touched almost 1 million households, saved hundreds of lives, and educated so many people. Just a cohort of 200 women reaching out to 1 million people and telling them, the dangers of using electricity improperly, going to schools and teaching our youth. I learned very early on in my career, if you want to save today, you can spend a lot of time convincing adults, but children are a lot more receptive. I think a lot more logical also. So we need to go to schools, and we need to create that sustainable leg of interaction with this population. I don't know how many were around in schools when there used to be this curriculum. There was this civic sense used to be taught in schools. It's no longer taught.
Yeah, it's not.
I think it needs to come back, and it needs to come back with vengeance, but garbed in how climate change affects people. Sajjeed, the sad reality is that a lot of people still think that, it's not my problem. It's really not my problem. But we have to cross that bridge. So that narrative building that Justice Aisha ji talked about, I think that will be the key to unlocking critical momentum, which at this point in time, we've got businesses on board. Ayla very rightfully said, businesses are very quick to spot opportunity if they see that this is going to sort of minimize their risks. A lot of them are using it to cut back on costs, and there is significant cost saving. We've seen that as well. We've deployed a lot of digital communication. So I have 500,000 users now going on to e-bills. That's that many less. I have to send out a bill every month. So you can imagine the amount of paper being saved. Somebody has to go and deliver that bill every single month. These things add up. So there is significant saving. The business case is there. So businesses will not have difficulty getting on board. But we have to make climate change consciousness exciting, and if I have the liberty to say sexy.
Now, I think very rightly pointed out. I think there are 2-3 things you highlighted in a very elegant way. Business case is an important thing. If the private sector has to mobilize, they should know that what and when they will make money or what risk they are avoiding, so what they are saving in that thing. And then you talked about the narrative, and it has to be humanized. We talked a lot in these sessions and sometime online around the NDCs. How many people are familiar with what is NDC, number one, and what's in it in Pakistan? Can you raise your hand? NDCs, if you know what it is, and number two, what's in it? Very few. So, Madam Secretary, that gives you an opportunity, and I think we raised that in a earlier session as well. NDC can't be delivered publicly. Private sector has to be mobilized. So they should pick up their sectors and initiative. And by the way, I'll suggest everybody go and read NDC. It's a lovely document. There's a great progress, and there are great initiatives which private sector can really leverage on. And their policy and support structure exists there. It's just the public and private sector engagement, and like Sadia picked up, make it easy for the business to understand where the opportunity. Don't tell them where the risk is. They will be scared. So just tell them that where the opportunity is, they thrive on that. So I think that's one of a key area from a narrative side, that this is something which I would suggest we should pick up. We will come to the questions again. We will go to Umar Saab. Umar Saab, just picking up on the Dollars, and we know that the Dollars has got a great history in terms of the sustainable manufacturing, in terms of not only the process, but the technology and the refrigeration gases which you are using. How you see that ecosystem evolving in Pakistan, where not only the Dollars, but your value chain, your customers as well as your distributors and your vendor also get aligned in that, their capacity building and the investment which they may need that. So how this value chain impact we can generate using Dollars as an example.
Right. Thank you, Sajjeed, for that question. So the way I look at it, I think this conference today, the theme, which is navigating the unknown, really sustainability, because we're trying to act today for a tomorrow which is actually unknown. We don't know where we're heading. So this really truly is the essence of sustainability. To answer your question, I think we really need to understand that this truly is a man-made crisis. It's not an act of God. And if it's a man-made crisis, how it happened was because 100 years ago or 150 years ago, electricity came about. I'm sorry, Sadia, but that's one of the reasons why it happened. But we are also part of the problem. Then mechanized manufacturing started, internal combustion engines came in. All these things have helped humanity develop in ways that was never done for centuries or even for all the known history before that. So the development that has happened and the progress that has humanity we've made in the last 150 years is more than the entire documented history of humanity. Now, but what is it? It has actually happened at the cost of environment and climate. And the science is very clear on that. 2024 was the hottest year on record. We actually hit the target which had been set of 1.5 degrees. It happened in 2024. So it's really facing us every day. Now, if we talk about our products and energy, I think we have to first understand that the 40% of all the global power consumption is coming from 4 product categories: refrigeration, heating and cooling, electric motors, and lighting. Right? So it's refrigeration, heating and cooling, and motors, electric motors, and lighting. So these 4 contribute to almost 40% of the entire consumption of electricity. Now, we've done a lot of work, and I think one of the things that came out in discussion this morning as well, I think organizations like ourselves and many others have to now start designing solutions. We can't just be talking about the problem, and if we don't start designing solutions, we'll never get to a solution. And at Dollars and at our global company Beko, we actually invested heavily in R&D, and that's exactly what everyone else needs to be doing. We need to sort of split an organization into 3 scopes: scope 1, 2, and 3 in terms of the emissions. I feel scope 1 and 2 is the easy part. where you can go into green manufacturing and everything. It's the scope 3 which is the biggest challenge. And in my conversations with most people, a lot of people don't even know what scope 3 means. It's basically the product in use, the energy that's using well when the consumer is using it. In our industry, 98% of our emissions are scope 3. Now, if we don't solve the scope 3 problem, we're not even moving anywhere. So making our plants energy efficient, putting solar panels in our factories is the easy part. It's the scope 3 which is the challenge, and this is where a lot of R&D investment is required. And today, I think there are best-in-class products available in the market which are able to, so for example, the refrigerators that we sell today use 50% less energy compared to 10 or 15 years ago, right? But there are 25 million refrigerators already in use in Pakistan. A large majority of them would be pre this change. Now, how do we make people understand that they need to upgrade, right? Similarly, for washing machines, now there are washing machines which use 60% less water. They are existing, right? No one talks about dishwashers. Dishwashers use, in one wash, 9.5 liters of water. The same dishes are washed with 125 liters of water under the tap. One dishwasher can save you almost 100,000 liters a year. Right? So when you start adding all things up, so my point is that through R&D, through innovation, all these products out there now, best class. Now the challenge really is to how do we educate the consumers. We're running a campaign, we're talking about building better habits at home. We're trying to educate our customers to understand the sustainability side of the products as well. So the new products that are going out are obviously very sustainable, but the problem is the ones that already exist. And in our industry, the change cycle is much longer than most other industries. So people will not change that easily. So that really is the challenge. But we need to be committed to that 1.5 degrees because now with the 1.5 already being hit, I've already started hearing conversations, let's move that to 2. I wear my 1.5 degree commitment on my chest every day to make sure no one forgets that we still need to be committed to 1.5 degrees. And I think every company and every industry needs to understand their scope 3 challenge and address that.
I think definitely 1.5 is something which we are hitting, and 4 is something which already for some areas and cities is going. But I think the biggest thing which Dollars brought out, if you pick up that point, taking a responsibility for their product which is not used by them but used by the customer. And now they are tracking that what product is out there used by customer, which is paid by customer, where the electricity is being consumed by customer and paid by customer. But Dollars is saying, I need to reduce that emission, I need to reduce that electricity usage there. And that's what the scope 3 is all about. If all organizations started talking about their end of their life cycle of the entire product, so that will solve a lot of scenarios and issues which we are facing today, including the replacement and the recycling mechanism.
Absolutely.
There are organizations in the world, they have started getting into the replacement one, but there is a certain subsidies which are available to them for the financial side. And that's bring me to Anayat Ismail. Very interestingly, like Dollars picked up on that side, that there is a scope 3 which is generated because they are selling a certain product. If they don't sell it, that will not be there. If we assume that nobody else is selling that, right? Similarly, once we come to the financial sector, in a financial sector, the organization like the HBL or HBL Microfinance may not have that kind of a mission, but the money they have deployed, there is a 700 times more emissions which they are generating. And with State Bank bringing the ESRM in place, and then IFRS coming as well, like SECP also bringing the reporting standard, which also require to report the finance emission there. How your organization is really screening the investment they are making, the portfolio which exists, like in terms of the equipment, there is a portfolio which exists which need to be replaced. Similarly, there are loans and the investments which are made earlier, they need to be replaced as well. So how you are tracking in terms of data, reporting that, and how you are making the intervention going forward, that whenever you make a decision, it's a more climate responsible decision in terms of investments.
Thank you for your question. It's always the difficult one that the people last get. But just to tell you that I think as a sponsor shareholder, you have to have courage to take difficult decisions. In 2020, the HBL Group took a stated decision to not do any new coal financing. And that requires courage, because that means, as the largest infrastructure lender in the country, with coal being the cheapest source of energy, you are basically telling all your customers that you will not be financing any coal project. We did that, and we have been doing that since 2020. And the existing, that we do have the coal in the portfolio, will be exited by 2030. So these are the kind of decisions that you take, and even with the ESRM, so we are the only ones in the country with a stated policy about this. And then when you look at the kind of sustainable lending that we're doing, so we're doing, there are both. There are environmentally linked facilities as well, and then there are socially linked facilities as well, because they both go in the ESRM. So if you're looking at the key performance indicators, there are things like inclusion, job creation, gender diversity. So we are compliant with all the, whether it's the IFC standards for the ESRM modules, and that's critical.
No, thank you. Thank you. And Umar sir, one thing reminds me that you picked up that we never accounted for the cost of nature. There are two stakeholders sitting here, ACCIA from ACCA, who was promoting integrated reporting way back, which actually account for the nature capital
So now
in
with
terms of the
S1
cost.
and S2 coming
it
in,
was
obviously
not adopted as big way,
yeah.
but definitely with the sustainability standards coming in, I think these are the things which
I'm really
which will
looking forward
help
to
them.
S1 and S2 being properly
Yeah,
adopted.
exactly
across
that
the
one.
board.
Sorry, if I may add, because again, when you look at it, and yes, you've talked about scope 3, but then there's scope 1 and scope 2. And when you talk about reducing your own emissions as an organization, when you're a large purchaser, so for example, the HBL Group, and then being part of the Khan Development Network, so the AKDN agencies, we have serious purchasing power.
Exactly.
And it was when we went to, like Dolan's and the other manufacturers of split air conditioners, to say we need the kind of air conditioners that will have that environmentally friendly coolant rather than the one which you are using. And even in the terms of the products and your customers, it's key.
Just building on what Maya is saying, I think I see a big shift. When we talk to younger consumers, the Gen Zs of this world, so there is a very strong business case for the commercial organizations
Exactly,
now.
definitely.
The younger generation, when they go out to buy stuff today, are more aware about sustainability and environment, and are making their choices keeping
More
this
conscious.
into consideration as well.
And I think the important point you pick up on a generation one, there is a $68 trillion which is in an intergenerational transfer right now, which will happen in the next 6, 7, 8 years. And they are the biggest consumer and the influencer and the investor at the same time.
Exactly.
And they are the most eco-conscious. So if the businesses do not align themselves with the climate and the sustainability priority, so this is the amount which might exist with them today because of their previous generation. In the next generation, they are going to take it out. So be very, very careful how you really come and state your policy and act upon that. Another thing from a generation side, they do not believe in the conversation only. They want to see the action, data, analytics, assured information by the third party. They are born and raised in the era where there's a lot of fake news. So they need to really don't go with the opinions, they go with the data. So I want to pick a couple of questions from the hall before I start my next round of questions. Anybody, any question from the hall? Okay, so you prepare your question if, sorry, there's a, can we get a mic there? Be very precise, state your name, and then if you can address that, who you want to respond for that question, please.
Okay. Does it work? Hello. This is Sayyeda Asma Indrabi, donor coordination consultant with the Prime Minister, AJNK. So I want to congratulate the organizers of this event who have gathered the great leaders over here. I just want to comment on a few things. It's not particularly a question, but just a comment, since I'm working with the government of AJK, and we are working on the donor coordination and how we can make the sustainable development goals that we have targeted to achieve till 2030. I want to commend the current government who has given a great roadmap in the form of 5 E's. So the need of the hour is how we can integrate these 5 E's with all the development that's going on, be it the private sector, be it the development partners. The problem is that we've been working in silos, the reason that we stand here today. So we need to build these collaboration. The organizer of this event needs great applaud because they have gathered the leaders here. That's what we need to do, to work in collaboration, not in the silos. Then I want to commend ACCA because since I've been a student of ACCA, the great contribution it has done in my life, the curriculum they design, the courses they design, they capacitate their student with what's going on in the world.
It's not a planted question, I can tell you.
No, I'm telling you, it wasn't a question. I just wanted to comment, yeah. So I just want to share with all the audience the great contribution ACCA is making in Pakistan. They capacitate their student during the coursework with the global world. So, and then Helen was talking about the disclosure standards, she was talking about the sustainability audits. That's what you make a part of a system and then it becomes unavoidable.
Yeah.
A student who's studying in a degree and then, you know, the standards that are in the real world, they make it unavoidable. So that's sustainability. So when you talk about environment and you talk about our society, I think so livelihood is the basic importance.
Yep.
And environment stands at the last. So what we can do as a government, as the people of the state, what we can do is like how we can integrate in the curriculum. The entry point is the curriculum, be it the schools or the universities or any.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
But thank you very much for the great comment and the questions. There are certain suggestions. I think one suggestion I pick up that the silo thing. I think that's what we have seen a lot. And my experience working with the other countries and the other businesses as well, as soon as you start reporting, you start extracting that information, that data start coming up, it helps you to build the narrative and create that visibility, and that's where the silo, we start collaborating more to make sure that now the visibility is there. So data is the one of a key area which is important to break those silos and bring people together, provided they want to work on the same collective action or initiative. Second part, Ayla, if you want to comment on the ACCA initiative or anything you want to respond on that. Say thank you.
Yeah, first of all, of course, thank you for recognizing that. I think what we all are doing is the work that we should be doing because it is about responsibility. We are responsible for not ourselves, for the ecosystems that we create around the world, the countries that we operate in, the regions that we operate in. And when we talk about building capacity, we are talking about not just doing this for ourselves, but for the larger planet's benefit. And that has a positive impact, not just for the 8 billion population here, but many, many generations to come. So, of course, ACCA has been a pioneer in terms of not just building capacity for everybody else, but internally looking at its own operations as well, applying SBTI, science-based targets, measuring its own emissions. In the last 3 to 4 years, in terms of how ACCA functions, it has greatly changed, and we are absolutely cognizant as to what is the need in terms of what the youth of the world needs in terms of future ready to address and to provide for needs of various sectors and regions and in industries. So we continue to evolve and work with all partners and stakeholders around the world because we believe in stakeholder collaboration.
Thank you, Ayla. Thank you very much. Dr. Sehgal, coming back to you, I think as a UNDP, you have got a lot of visibility in what's happening around the world as a UNDP, as an organization. And one of the feedback which keep getting from the climate fund investors, the people, even from our local financial institutions as well, that they are not getting the right kind of bankable project. Their investment gone in the projects, but they don't know the impact. The assessment is not quantified properly, or if it's quantified, it's not reliable. So I think a lot of questions from a climate and sustainability perspective, which led to a lot of greenwashing, fines and everything in Europe, that coming out from the data which we are using. And luckily, since 23 onward, there's a lot of standards and the frameworks which are available as a guidelines. So as a UNDP, number one, are you facing that problem, getting that data timely back to you, that what the project was and what the assessment? And number two, the data which you are getting, is it reliable enough that which can help you to make further decisions?
Thank you very much. So maybe I'll mention a couple of things that both relate to data, and I'll say something about coordination. You know, we affectionately refer to MOCC as MOCC, but we forget the other EC that actually exists, right? The EC is environmental coordination. And I think there's an interesting initiative that is happening as we speak between now and the end of June, where MOCC, led by the Secretary, and a number of donors, a number of ministries are coming together to develop specifically bankable projects that can go to a big and critical and important forum, Finance for Development Forum in Spain, late June. Could be the biggest finance and development opportunity this year, maybe for the next few years as well. Important also because we have 5 years to go for the Sustainable Development Goals. The numbers are not good, and the numbers are old. So some of the numbers that we all know by heart are actually quite old. This idea, for example, that Pakistan is on track to only achieve 35 out of 169 targets or indicators and Sustainable Development Goals is 2 years old. It takes almost 2 years or more to actually aggregate up numbers from the provinces, pull them together through the ministry, through planning, etc., and have an actual figure, etc. Another number that is now pretty old, it's at least 2 years old, comes from how much it would take the government of Pakistan to spend on Sustainable Development Goals so that it actually moves up in the organization. 16% of GDP, $52 billion, that's an old number. It must be more than that. So the challenge of data is that the world is moving much, much quicker than we're able to collect data and analyze it. Forget the collection and the analysis, it's only as good as a decision maker is able to do something about it. And this, I think, is where all of this pulls together into the reform agenda underway, economic reforms, the 5 E's, very catchy, an important part of the narrative, environment, empowerment, e-governance, education, etc., etc. It's really, really quite important. So the agenda for Pakistan over the next few years, I think, is critical and important. I'll just say 2 or 3 things that I think have now mainly turned from a nice talking point into a reality. One is what I've learned from the private sector here over the last year and a half since I've been here in Pakistan. I think the private sector in Pakistan has learned to do well and do good at the same time. So we're not talking about charity or CSR, we're talking about an alignment to Sustainable Development Goals as described by this panel, because sustainability is important, because inclusion is important, diversity is important. So that is one area. Secondly, we are still awaiting some big policy decisions and indications that I think will make a difference for climate change. State Bank is working on a green taxonomy. Why is that important? Because you can label everything greenwashing, you can label everything climate related, or you can actually identify particular areas that relate to water or energy or sanitation or even health and stunting or risk mitigation or risk insurance that I think make a difference. Otherwise, If you measure everything or you measure nothing, it won't really make a big difference. Thirdly, the discussion now around climate change, and I think this starts at least 2 or 3 years back, probably longer, is that we are no longer talking about climate change as something nice to have. A lot of the discussion now is about equity. It's about climate justice, it's about environmental justice, and I think this is the real narrative now that I think is really, really quite important because of the sense of inequity that actually exists. So aligning to SDG 13 is not the problem now. It's about 1 and 10, poverty and equity. It's about gender, it's about water and sanitation, and I'll tell you the third and last talking point, which I think is really quite important. Once an issue becomes a governance issue, like climate change becoming a governance issue, that I think is when it's taken more seriously. It's not a project, it's not an idea, it's not a pilot. It becomes something embedded in the structure and the planning of government. You have a plan and a policy and a law, and you have implementation, accountability follows. I believe if an issue is not in development, if an issue is not a governance priority or an issue, it's not going to be important. And I think for Pakistan, we have already moved in that direction where governance related to climate or the governance of climate, climate change, climate impact, etc., I think is really becoming at the heart of what needs to be done.
No, thank you very much. Do we have any question from the audience before we start wrapping up the session? Here. Sorry, we will come back to you later.
Hello. Dr. Shagufta Jamia, CEO of Next Gen Impact Consulting. I work very closely with the university and college students on environment and some community-based initiatives. My question is directed to Dr. Samuel, because UNDP is very actively and purposefully involved in communities, rural and urban communities. How can young people from urban slums and rural towns be utilized or used for climate innovation, not only for climate awareness, because we have to move towards innovation, and there's so many ways where we can involve more than 60% of the population. So what are your views on that? Thank you.
So if we can take another question and then we start replying that. Can we get that question? Can we get Mike here?
My name is Ahmed Kamal, and I'm kind of representing the 60% of youth. We talk about gender inclusion all the time, but we kind of exclude the youth, for example, for most part. And having worked closely with different justices, Justice Mansoor recently said that access to climate finance is a basic human right now. So I wanted to know the thoughts of the panel in this regard as well.
Access to climate finance
is a basic human right now.
Dr. Samuel, innovation.
Okay, so that's a simple question to answer. We work with JS Bank, also an accredited entity related to GCF, over the past year and a half in a blended finance part. Very small money, I have to be honest. A little bit of money from them, 1/3 and 2/3 from us, and 2/3 from JS Bank, for a competition to actually get young innovators to basically present to a panel ideas for climate aligned projects and programs, and they can use that money for anything they like. It wasn't very big money. It was maybe $60,000 or $70,000. 100+ applied. 4 entities won. I visited 2 of them in Karachi, and this I think relates to the youth part as well. 2 entities, both being run by very, very young people and very ahead of the game. One you might know is Vlectra. Vlectra electric motorcycle, super motorcycles. 3 types: $1,000 motorcycle for delivery purposes, $2,000 motorcycle for anybody that wants to actually, have a little bit of an enjoyment, and $3,000 if you want something that looks like a Harley. They build the entire motorcycle here minus the battery. And interestingly enough, they are a profitable company, by a young investor who, instead of spending time on Wall Street, decided to come here, and they're using the little money that we have given them with JS Bank for research and development. Another one that I actually visited is in a slum area. And this is important, and I don't remember the slum part of Karachi, but their operation is right across from the areas where they collect trash and sort it, etc. They turn single-use plastics, like wrappers for chips and everything else, into bricks through a very interesting process that they actually have been offering now to Shell and other big companies. Young people, profitable, very interesting. So I would say there's actually no shortage of innovation in this country, but I do believe that there may be a shortage of finance to actually make the difference between good and great. And I think a lot of this finance will most likely come from the internal sources. And I know that there are constraints on domestic banks who lend a lot to the government. Everybody knows that. But maybe with some stabilization measures and freeing up a little bit of the debt return or interest return, some of that freed up money can actually go to innovators, because I think that there is enough innovation and energy and enthusiasm to be able to get that done.
Thank you. So I think it's addressed your question, access to climate finance as well. There are models and there are banks who are working. Anybody who wants to add that? Otherwise, our times is up. And okay. So thank you very much. I think great applause for our panelists. I think they have contributed a lot there. I think a couple of things if I wrap up everything. So number one, narrative building and stakeholder engagement. That's something which came out very strong. And if you have noticed that the people coming from the public sector, development sector, and the private sector, they are using a little bit different language. One is using SDG, other is using IFRS and ESRM. It's all linked though, but that's something where we have to create that capacity building, that what they are doing under the IFRS, which is a part of SDG, so as a consolidated, we can do that part. Another part which came out is the data. If we really want to attract the climate finance and the continuity of the project, the information is important, and the reliable data and timely. We are seeing the city governments who are going with the quarterly reporting rather than the yearly or 2 yearly reporting. So they are going with the dashboards which are very, very live, and those are also attracting the FDI, and they are reporting their environment KPIs on that side. Other area is the collective action, not working in a silo, and again in the world which we have seen, if there's enough data and infographics available, so people start seeing that, believing that, and collaborating. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for being a great audience as well. So that's where we end this session.